This trim video seems so innocent compared to what they have now. Hello, it's Jennifer from Sea Lemon. I am back with another recreating books that are on YouTube. Today's video is Troom Select 5 DIY notebooks you need to try. It was made in 2017. Kind of think too this was like the beginning of the thumbnail with mouth in the image. It's still so popular now, but I think that was like the start of it in 2017. Let's see what I can come up with based on inspiration from their notebooks that I needed to try.
Transform an eyeshadow palette into a notepad. Is it magic? No, it's just a new weird school supply idea.
This was only like 3 years ago, but it's just crazy how different it was. I don't know if I want to make a book from a makeup eyeshadow palette. I have like one because I don't wear that much eyeshadow. I don't even think I could make a book out of it. I do, however, have a watercolor palette, and I think I could make something functional here. Not a hidden notebook, but maybe like an integrated swatch book. I'm thinking like a perfect bound notebook that could sit on top of the palette and fold out along with it. To try this out, I cut up about 5 watercolor sheets into long strips that were about the same size as the palette. And since the palette has rounded corners, I rounded the page corners as well. Now I have all my swatch book pages. I'm going to perfect bind the long side with just regular school glue because I am going to tear these off, so it's okay if the glue isn't totally strong. I find this glue is just enough to hold it together, but easy enough to pull apart. After that's dry, let's make the hinge. I'm using strong duct tape for that, making it about 1 centimeter wide to stick to the top of the palette plus the swatch book, and making it the same length as the book itself. I taped half of it to the glued side of the swatch book, and then the other half of it to the edge of the top of the palette, while still leaving a little bit of a gap in between them so it has enough room to hinge out. So here's a little bit of a better view in case this makes more sense. If you want to recreate this, you can fan all sides out and then close it all together so it's one compact swatch book plus watercolor palette. Now to see it in action, you can test your colors as you do and then test the paint on the paper to see what it looks like. You can close it all up. You can remove the top layer of the swatch book so you have a clean page underneath, and save the swatch if you need to. So this was my recreation of their eyeshadow palette notebook. It's not the same as you can see, but it works better for me because I have more watercolor palettes than eyeshadow palettes. My version isn't as secretive as theirs, but I did get to keep the colors in the palette. I didn't have to remove them, and this notebook is more integrated into the function of the watercolor palette.
In this video, we'll make such a useful thing as a notebook.
I think I like this notebook more than the makeup notebook. Okay, they're using a hole punch to make the binding. I don't have that kind of hole punch, but I have a hand hole punch, which could work. I wanted to try something with these 5 by 5 inch board pieces that I've had forever. I haven't had the right project to use them on, so I'm going to use them on this, and I have been wanting to try my own board book. You guys might remember this book from my meditative doodling ideas video. I'll link it down below. I purchased this one, but I've been wanting to make my own version of it, and it seems simple enough. I'll be using 2 binding rings. I don't have 2 in matching colors, so it's going to be green and blue. And then I'm using this screw punch, which will help me make the holes. Starting with one board, this is going to be my template for the rest, making the holes about 1 inch away from the top and bottom. And I did this along all 10 boards. Now to bind them all together, just slipping the binding rings through the holes and closing them. But I wanted to recreate some kind of triangle design like on their notebook, so I removed the top board and I'm going to paint that or draw that with some paint pens. I could have cut up paper like they did, but this seemed to make more sense to me, plus I just like drawing on these boards with opaque pens. I then put the cover back onto the binding rings to complete my notebook. Both notebooks have a 2-hole binding method that can allow you to remove and add pages. Mine might be a bit more simple because you don't have to untie and retie any string, but a sturdier binding ring makes more sense for thicker board material. My triangle pattern cover is more minimal, but I did try to stay within their color palette for inspiration.
Is it an exquisite brand powder? No, it's a notepad. It's a useful DIY thing anyway.
Okay, they're doing some perfect binding. Okay, that one it's a notepad. I don't know if it needs to be disguised in a makeup or perfume box, but it's functional. So I don't have an expensive makeup box, but I do have some leftover paper, and I have a leftover half of a folder that I think could work as a cover for a notepad inside. I trimmed off the top of the folder to make it more even. I made 2 score lines in the center, so these will be the hinges, and then the spine will be thick enough if I want to put a really thick notepad inside. Since the paper of my notepad will be white, I thought the inside of this cover will look a little plain, so to spice it up a bit, let's add some color to the inside, and I'm using spray paint. I don't know if this is the best method for this plan, but let's give it a try. I would prefer this to be a matte finish instead of glossy, but it did turn out better than I thought it would, and it's a nice pop of color. To hold a notepad of paper inside this, I plan to use a prong fastener, and the size of the notepad will be a little bit less than the right panel of this cover. So I cut up about 7 sheets of letter-size paper to this size, and used 1 page as the template, making the holes the same width as the prong fastener, and using a standard hole punch to make them. I did this on all the pages of the notepad, and used that same template to mark small cuts on the cover so I know where to put the prong fastener. And now I can put everything together. Notepad pages onto the inside, put the fastener portion on top and fold over the prongs, and then lock them in place with these little sliders. This notepad is also removable, so once I run out of pages, I can add more or take them out if I want to. And since it's a recycled folder, I have that little flap on the side that I can add extra paper to. Again, my version isn't trying to hide anything or prank anybody. My version is similar to theirs where I have a notepad on the right side of the cover, but using a prong fastener allows you to add more paper without worrying about gluing a whole new notepad to the inside, making it easier to add paper if you need to. But if you want to recreate this and you can't find a prong fastener, I think their version totally works as well.
Do you like sweets? Turn your notepad into a bar of chocolate.
I don't know what I'll try to recreate that because I don't have any clay. At least it looks believable. I mean, I've made phone cases that look like ice cream sandwiches, so sometimes it's fun to make everyday objects look like other things. I don't know if it's worth it to make your notebook look like a piece of bitten chocolate. Another food item that I crave just as much though, Chipotle, and I do have a to-go bag, which I saved because I like the typography on it, so maybe I could use that portion on a book cover. Similar to theirs, I'm going to just decorate the cover of an existing book, and this one is similar where it has a white coil on the binding, but I'm going to use a thicker board to make all new covers. To remove the existing ones, I'm just prying out the wire a little with some needle nose pliers, and I'm going to save these covers to use as a template. I think this area of the Chipotle bag could work for the front cover, and I'm going to recycle the backboard of that watercolor paper I used in the first book to use as the board to wrap the Chipotle bag around. I'm using the original cover as a template and cutting out the front and back cover. Then I'm going to take apart the to-go bag so I have a flat surface of paper to work with, and then gluing the board piece to the area of the bag I want to show on the front. Trimming a border around it, cutting the corners at an angle like this, and gluing those flaps over. Then I cut out a 3 by 5 inch piece of cardstock to glue to the inside of the cover. Repeating that to make the back cover, and now I'm going to punch the holes for the binding. I taped the original cover on to use as a template, and again using my Japanese screw punch to make those holes. And now I can add the new covers to the notebook. And carefully pressing the wire coil back together with pliers. My recreation might not be as interesting or unique as a bitten off piece of chocolate, but it matches more of what I like in notebook covers. Fun typography or just something fun on the cover, but not so literal as a piece of chocolate. But their notebook did inspire me to try something food related.
Oh, this notebook is too plain. Let's make it special.
Okay, I kind of don't even want to recreate that one because I feel like I've already made something similar. There's an earlier video where the cover was made out of a LaCroix can box. If you want to check that out, I'll link it right here. You could basically do this with any can box or food box, or of course cut out a can shape like they did. This is pretty much what I would do to recreate their notebook, so I didn't see the need to make it twice. In their version, it looks like they glued a can on top of an existing book. You can do that, but if you want to make something from scratch, in my video I'll show you how to do that with staples using a saddle stitch method. I am more addicted to LaCroix, so that's why I have this from that video. Both versions can make a fun notebook, and it's really up to your preference.
In this tutorial, we'll show how to make a notebook quickly and easily and cover it with a cute handmade scrapbook paper.
Okay, this is a quick and easy. Let's see if this is quick and easy. And they're using that hole puncher again, but this time they're making semi-circle holes. It works. I just think the holes are a little bit too large for the book. They're doing a saddle stitch or a pamphlet stitch, pamphlet bookbinding. Okay, we're gluing the inside pages to the cover. Little bit of glue on the edge of the paper, just a little bit. Okay. To make what they call a handmade scrapbook paper, I'm going to make my own with this large sheet of cardstock and paint my own pattern onto it. Honestly, I didn't have a plan of what to paint onto this. I just knew I wanted to keep it in the floral arena since their notebooks were floral. Okay, here's my finished pattern paper to use as the cover. For the inside pages, I'm using 8 sheets of letter size paper, and I'm going to fold the whole stack in half. To make the binding holes, I'm using this binding guide, which I have reviewed in a previous video. I'll link it up here if you want to check it out. It just makes the process a bit faster, but you can, of course, make the holes just using a thumbtack or an awl. These are spaced a ½ inch apart. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the cover paper. Instead of gluing the cover to the paper, I'm going to stitch them all together using thread. To hold it all together while I bind, I'm using binder clips on the ends. And the method I'll be using is a chain dash stitch. It looks like this, and I'm using yellow thread. If you want to learn how I made this binding, I have a whole tutorial for it, along with 7 other single stitch binding methods. Check that out right here. If you're new to bookbinding, these are beginner friendly, so I highly recommend this video. And instead of making this one even longer, I'm just going to show you this and then skip ahead to my final result. Now that the binding is complete, I can trim the edge so it's all one length. And as a finishing touch, I'm going to round the corners. My recreation is similar to theirs, where it's a single pamphlet or signature of paper, and I was inspired by their floral pattern to do my own twist, but I chose not to glue the cover to the inside page because I just didn't see the need. And I personally prefer exposed bindings, especially when there's thread, so the stitches are exposed and you can play with the color and the pattern of stitching. As I've said many times before, there are multiple ways, endless ways to bind a book, so their way or my way isn't right or wrong, it's just really up to your personal preference, and I thought it was fun to get inspiration from their books and recreate my own version. Well, I hope this was interesting for you to watch, and maybe this sparks some ideas for you to try on your own notebooks. If there are any other book projects you would like to see me recreate, leave it in a comment below, and give this video a thumbs up to let me know you like this kind of video. A big thanks to my patrons and YouTube members for your support. If you would like to support more videos on my YouTube channel, check out my YouTube memberships and Patreon tiers in the links below. Also, if you don't want to miss my next upload, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the bell right next to it so you can be notified every time I post a new video. I will put another video around here to jump into. You can find all of these links in the description below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!